Can we hear it start up?
Sure can.
So it's a one-piece tilt front end now.
It's a 66 Fairlane.
This is my office right here.
Hi, Randy, Baby Awesome Cars Forever. I'm here today with Rob Sparks, and he's going to tell us about his 1936 Buick.
Hey, Randy. Thanks for coming and looking at it. So we got this out of Michigan a couple of years ago. It's been in an estate. Old gentleman had it for about 40 years. We've been looking for this style of car with a hunched trunk on the back of it. This is one of my check the box cars I'd like to have a little while. So this is a great driver. Is the way I would term it. It's got an excellent body on it. It had sat a long time. We could not test drive it, so it took a little bit of time of finagling and negotiating, but we think we got into it at the right point. We've totally rebuilt the brakes, put a new master cylinder on it, new tires and inner tubes on it, so it does have tube tires. Had some engine issues, and we'll talk about when we get the engine running to kind of show you what we've got. We just had it buffed this summer, have not done anything to the paint. It was probably restored in the late 70s, early 80s by another person in Michigan who sold it to the gentleman that owned it, that we bought it off his estate. But we believe most of the time since the 1980s it sat parked in a barn.
Wow.
The gas tank was out of it. So we did rebuild the fuel system as well. Put a new tank in it, put a new fuel pump on it. So it's been great. It's got an interior that was probably one of those Hampton interior kits that was very popular in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. That company has recently run out of business. I'm not sure if it's because people like us aren't doing these cars or what, but the interior's in great shape. It does have the original headliner still in it.
Well, speaking of which, let's go ahead and open it up and I'll get some.
So this is it's a Series 40, the basic car that came out that year. This is the two-door sedan model of it. Options that you can see is the clock, the cigarette lighter is what they termed it. It's also got a locking key, steering column key. It's got a ratchet that turns and you can lock your ignition out. Theft was a big issue in the 30s on cars, and so they started upgrading some safety features to try to keep a car more safe.
That's probably a pretty good idea.
One of the options that it doesn't have is does not have a radio that would be right in the middle of that dashboard when you, just kind of pull it forward. We added some seat belts. I got grandkids. If we have the car seats, we have to have somewhere to latch them in. So.
You did a nice job on the seatbelts too. It looks like they belong in here.
Yeah, just try to match it up the best you could, and it's an option that we ended up having. It's 3-speed on the floor, as you can tell. Shifts really well. I like some of the detailing, Randy, like along the trim along the door edge there. Just interesting that they spent the time to put details out like they did.
We'll go around and get a shot of the steering wheel side. And
Gauges all work. Speedometer dial is not tracking the miles exactly right. It has the gears inside that turn the wheels are made out of pot metal. They swell with age. So I've got a guy, I believe he was in Minnesota or Michigan too, also that rebuilds those. At some point we may pull that out and get rebuilt.
Well, this is in good shape.
Yeah, it's one of the features. The 36 for General Motors on the body. It was the first year they could stamp an entire roof line in one stamp, so they got rid of the inserted wood. But this car still has wood in the door frames and the trunk. We'll show you the trunk here in a second. So the framework that holds the doors all together is the entire framework of the door is still wood, and they basically nail the steel back onto it. It's the way they did cars pretty much from the time they started making them until 1937, and everything went steel. So this was last year for the wood door. You can still buy these kits, although these doors are solid. But I suspect they probably weigh about 100 pounds a piece. So
Pretty heavy.
pretty heavy. And then you've got the trunk, which is the reason I bought the car, because I love the trunk. The trunk kit is the same way. And you can look at the metal down here. I mean, this shows you the condition of this car. It's just, there is no rot anywhere on this car. But the entire framework around here is wood that this thing is nailed to back up on these back sides and then up underneath it. So wood panels that hold it all together. So it's a great car, great shape, and feel pretty good about having it. Probably going to get some re-chrome done this winter on it, kind of clean up the bumpers a little bit and the grill. We're lucky enough to find a couple matching plates for Indiana.
Cool. This Buick emblem. And they say the bumpers appear to be in pretty good shape.
They're solid. They're getting some deterioration just from the age of it, but and we put new plug wires and rebuilt a few things on it, but basically the engine compartment's pretty much the way it was when we got it. They had already converted it to a 12-volt system, which works a lot better for everything involved, from lighting to the starting system.
I'll bet. Even under here it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it was why I went to look at it to start with, because it's kind of the reason why we bought it. I wanted to find something someone had for a while. There's a vacuum line there that goes to the wipers that's been plugged. It's got that's one thing that isn't working currently that we haven't taken time to try to diagnose. I remember my father telling me they never worked well when they were new. So vacuum wipers.
They never did work well.
We upgraded it with using the side markers for turn signals, and so it's pretty safe to go down the road. We put LED tail lights in it so they're brighter. And then my dad had an old set of fogs that we've had forever. He's been gone for a long time, and I've just never got rid of them, so I put them on the car.
Look good. Look good. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and start it up while we got the hood open.
233 cubic inch, about a little over 5. The compression is around 5. I can't think.
What, compression ratio?
Yeah. Pretty low compression engine. Doesn't got to keep carburetor. Pretty simple setup. Air cleaner's different than the one that really came on it. But this one works for us, so we just left it on.
And it's surprisingly quiet, I think.
Yeah. Most of the roads back then, we talked a little bit earlier, most of the roads back in those days were US 40 would have been the main road. A lot of that was still, there was brick and concrete and dirt, depending on where you were at in the country. So this would have been a car that would have probably ran typically around 45 mile an hour, but you can get up to 55, 60. It really needs another gear to go much faster than that. About Babbitt bearings in it, which are formed in the connecting rods and around the parts that you need to. It's pre-formed when you buy them, or they pour them. So that was something I wasn't really familiar with, but it had not had very many miles since it was rebuilt and somebody redid them all. So it's in really, really good shape as far as the inside of the engine is concerned. So, radiator's cool. We checked it for temp. It's got good fluid going through it. The engine seems there's no cold spots, so it looks like we got good circulation water. So we do have a few tools back in the old days you didn't have to have to check stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It does have an automatic choke on it that actually works. We changed a little bit on the butterfly. We put ethanol gas in it to start with just because I just bought gas and I'm thinking about that. I would never put ethanol gas in anything old. We can find it now. I mean, I haven't had trouble since I switched gas, but we were having trouble with overheating, and ethanol just has a lower boiling point than what this would have been set up for. And so the carburetor was just having a hard time adjusting the heat with the ethanol was just wanting to percolate basically every time you shut the engine off. So.
Okay. I'll tell you what, let's take a ride in it.
We'll head down the road.
I think it runs pretty smooth.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. If you get on it, you'll hear the clicking a little bit louder, but it runs pretty good for, what, 80, 84? 86 year old? Do the math, Rock.
It's the weekend. I don't do math on the weekends.
I got a 6-speed in the Hyundai and I keep wanting to shift gears on this one and that doesn't quite work. But. Find some here to work.
Three-speed, four-speed,
Just three.
three.
Could use a fourth if you find one. They did make aftermarket overdrives for them, I think. It's got options of, it's got a heater that's been added to, or was an option, came with it. Cigar lighter. It has locking steering column. So, and then it has a 6-speed. 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 6-speed because theft was a big problem back there. As the cars were getting more expensive, and it didn't take much to get it ignition going. So they started making locking steering columns that was key to a lot of them.
We actually have a clock.
Yep, it did have a clock. It's got a
Glove box.
just missing a. Doesn't have a radio, which was fairly new, but was an option. Usually don't grind much except I get in a hurry. Ride's pretty smooth for a pretty solid car for the age.
I think it runs fine. Reminds me of the old days though, when you could hear those gears and the whine and the...
Yeah, you know, any old James Cagney movie had these kind in there, and they all sounded the same way, pretty much.
Rob, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. This is one nice Buick. So,
Hey, thanks a lot, Randy. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming along. Or riding.
there we go. I want to thank all my subscribers. I really appreciate you subscribing. And if you're not subscribed, I would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. And we'll see you next time on Awesome Cars Forever.